We're back here at the Tulsa Arms Show. I'm with Jim Sapika, director of the NRA National Firearms Museum. We are joined, Jim, by a man who is had a break away from his autograph signing session down below, signing his book here. Steve Fiesta, always a pleasure to have you here, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
So what are you doing here?
I'm doing here pretty much hiking my new book, as a matter of fact.
There we go.
And this book, I want you to know, has seen a little use, and Phil had to bring it over personally so I could have a book to display today. But what I'd like to talk about today, guys, is the fact that this show is a little slower than it normally is. Now, you're wondering, what's the gun marketplace doing? Are things slowing down? The economy, this recession, is it finally taking its toll on the gun dealers and the collectors? A little bit. The show's off, but we've had a great election. We've had a lot of Republicans come in the office. The pressure's off a little bit. People are feeling more comfortable. They're not lethargic, but they are thinking about their disposable income right now, which has probably never been lower. The guys that used to pop for $1,000 to $1,500 gun, that's not really happening anymore. Even the guys that have $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 at the end of the year to spend on a pretty good gun, they're not spending it right now. So the gun business is off a little bit right now. Even good guns are down a little bit. There's certainly no fire sales out there, but average guns are selling for below average prices. Below average guns, add up the parts, figure out what they're worth, and don't pay a penny more. I don't think it's anything that's going to stay around for a long time. We've been through this a couple times before, Jim. You remember this, but overall, I still think guns are a good investment, and compared to your 401k or real estate, they look pretty good.
Well, and that's what I've always said about guns, Steve. I've said when you buy a new gun, of course your value drops off when you shoot it.
Yes.
But then after a couple years, it just kind of keeps steady rising, and you don't see a lot of this with the gun prices. You've just kind of seen gun values kind of steadily increase in price. There'll be times when they get hard to sell. They're not always the most liquid thing in the world. But do you see any long-term trend in that in terms of gun values overall?
No, blue chip investments, your best Colts, your best Winchesters, your engraved guns, the best of the best. These things are setting record prices, actually. But I will say, and Joe probably wouldn't want me to say this on the air, but I am anyway, those prices are being realized in auction houses these days. Yeah. You're not seeing world records sit on the floor here. You got to go to a major auction house, and they get the benefit of a worldwide audience these days. And frankly, there's a newer customer out there that's a little bit different than the boys and girls showing up here. Some of these newer customers don't want to go to a gun show, believe it or not, eat a $4 hot dog. They'd rather be at home. They'd rather have their glass of Chablis in front of them. They're looking at their monitor, and they can click away and buy a couple of guns. Isn't that nice? And not have to pay any parking. They're a different customer. You don't see these people on the radar. Some of them, most of them, are not at the gun shows here. But thankfully, it's a new demand factor that's coming to the marketplace, and would have never come into the marketplace without the auctions, both online and brick and mortar auction companies.
Well, what is the impact of the internet then, both on gun sales in general and on live auctions?
The overall factor is that there's increased demand. If you have a fixed supply and you have increased demand, the only thing prices can do is go up. And that's what they've done for the last 3 or 4 years. They've gone up. Well, some of that demand, we've seen that in ammunition. Ammunition used to be a runaway freight train here, and that kind of ended like about a year and a half ago. So the demand factor on current shooting guns is probably less right now than even your $2,000 or $3,000 collector items, because those things are ending up at the auction.
Well, yeah, and you bring in the political situation too.
Yes.
Last election cycle, there was panic buying when you had Democrats controlling both houses, the new administration coming in.
That's correct.
Do you see that relaxing a little bit with more of a sense of comfort with the House going back more to a pro-gun situation?
I won't say there's complacency in the marketplace right now, but there's no sense of urgency right now either. The fear factor is kind of gone for a while, and when that disappears, then the demand disappears for a little bit too. Overall, though, it's like you mentioned before, the nice thing about the gun business has always been, it's not one of these things. It's more like this, and the worst thing that normally ever happens in a gun marketplace, instead of going like that, The worst thing that happens is it levels off.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's pretty good in today's
Yeah, it
marketplace,
is.
you know,
Yeah,
just
it
to
is.
keep even.
Yeah.
But how about your 401k?
Yeah.
How about your house?
Yeah.
You know, except for gold and silver, which has been a runaway freight train, I think guns are as solid as they've ever been.
Well, a few years ago, there was a criticism that people were getting into gun collecting not out of a passion for the hobby, but solely as an investment. Do you think that was real, and do you see that continuing?
I think it's actually a good thing, Jim, that when people are worried about traditional investments, they look at firearms, maybe they look at guitars, they look at other collectibles as a vehicle to preserve value. That's brought some additional demand into it. You know, the first thing an investor always sells is his worst investment. And firearms haven't been their worst investment.
Yeah.
You know, they've sold. Maybe their stock has tanked, and maybe some of the real estate has tanked, and that's gone. But I don't see too many major players out there that are in it for the short term, trying to make a buck, because the trend has always been in firearms long term.
Gentlemen, I want to talk to you. I saw you at the Peterson Gallery opening at the National Firearms Museum. I was
Yes.
hoping we could hold you for an extra segment and talk about that
Sure.
and a few other items.
Sure.
Wait, we're gonna wrap up this Curator's Corner and be back with more with Jim Sapika and Steve Fiested on the next Curator's Corner.